Hello and welcome to the Cheadle and Gatley filmmakers showreel. I'm up here on Eccles Pike, which is near Buxton in the Peak District. And over there in the distance you can just about make out the outskirts of Stockport. Our club is on the far side of Stockport near Manchester Airport. It's quite a lively club. We have about 30 members and about an average of attendance of 22 every Thursday between September and May. In the old days you would have been able to see Stockport quite easily because of the smoke and the haze from industry. And one of those industries was hat making. Stockport was one of the centres of the hat making industry in the UK. And they have now the only dedicated hat museum in the country. They say so anyway. And a few years ago the Hat Making Museum approached us and asked us to record the memories of some of the surviving workers. It was a very hard industry and very labour intensive. After a lot of research we decided to make 6 very short films for showing in the museum, and we realised that we needed one film to just explain Stockport and hat making. And so here it is, the hatting metropolis.
Both my parents worked in hat making, as did lots of families in the area. We have written evidence of a family of hatters from the mid-1500s, yet even today not many people know that the area from Stockport to Denton, Failsworth and Oldham was a major centre of hat making in Britain until quite recently. By the start of the 20th century, there were at least 13 large factories within a few hundred yards of the town centre. And only 30 years later, by the time of the Second World War, there were 42, mostly family owned. But today it's all changed. My parents worked in several hat factories. Mother started work weighing fur at Ward's factory here in what is now the Hat Museum in 1930. The fur to make the felt for a hat was measured in precise amounts. For instance, it took 3 ounces to make a bowler hat. She moved to Carrington's in Kale Green and met my father in the mid-1930s. Carrington's was the first company allowing women to work at the wet end, where the felt was made in hot and steamy conditions. It was more money, but hard work. Permanently wet hands and wet feet if you didn't have good footwear, because the water and sulfuric acid solution on the floor could burn through thin soles. This was the site of Sutton and Torkington, one of the large hat factories in Stockport. In 1955, my mother worked there with her sisters, and after school myself and my brothers would go in and wait for them. This was be seen and not heard days. They couldn't see you because of the fog caused by the steam in the factory, and they couldn't hear you for the noise of the machinery, which was horrendous. The smells were totally disgusting: wet rabbit fur and sulfuric acid. When the workers came out, they had to comb their hair to get rid of all the rabbit fur that was in it that had been flying about. It wasn't all doom and gloom though. They used to have lots of fun, make jokes, and it was like a family atmosphere in most firms with a lot of laughter. My father was the chief engineer here in the 1950s, and this was his workshop. Being a maintenance engineer, quite often he worked on Sundays, and I used to come with my sister Brenda with his dinner, a hot roast dinner on a plate with a jug of gravy. It was lovely and warm in here, and the smells were delicious. Today it's a motor repair workshop. Ironic really when you think cars killed off the hatting industry. But the memory lingers on for me, as it does for many others who worked here just off Higher Hillgate. This is the 11-acre site of Christie's, one of the largest hat manufacturers in the country. My father also worked here in later years. The company closed down in 1997, and only 40 years ago all of the streets around here were full of hatters' cottages. Here in Denton, they tipped the hat to the past in a different way. They would use more wool felt than fur, and the processes were different, and this caused a rivalry between the towns. Denton also had its big names. This building beside the M67 is all that is left of Moore's, which 50 years ago employed over 1,000 people. Just a section of pediment and a plaque marks another big hatter, Wilson's. And there is nothing left of other well-known firms such as Howe's and the Denton Hat Company, where the Greenough brothers pioneered many technical changes in wool felt hatting right up to the 1980s. Hats from Stockport and Denton were sent all over the world. Now there are only 3 small companies left in the area. One of them, Breacher's in Stockport, is famous for the Breacher stitch, the zigzag which adapts to the flexibility in a hat and which is widely used today. Breacher provides accessories to other hat manufacturers worldwide. And there is a small cap manufacturer in Middleton. Failsworth Hats, still going strong after more than 100 years, is one of the largest hat suppliers in the UK, sending hats to major high street chains and to many countries worldwide. They still design and develop all their hats, splitting manufacture between Failsworth and China.
Our history is really important to us. Our craftsmanship and know-how developed over 100 years gives us a competitive edge now. We're using the same processes but just in a different way to keep up with modern trends. Hats are very fashionable now, very edgy, and we have to develop new styles to fit in with that.
3 companies keeping the tradition going in various ways. The skills are still here, and there are still many older journeyman hatters around. A little sad maybe at the industry's rapid decline, but still proud of what they brought to the area and the respect that came with it.
You might have thought a film called Straight Up and Down was about the Peak District, but of course the Peak District is as wavy and squiggly as it is up and down. This film by Graham Elliott was made for our 5-minute competition, and in our 5-minute competition each year we choose 3 letters to put in sequence in the title, and the letters for this particular year were IGH. The 5-minute competition often produces a real gem. Early one Christmas morning, Every club has its steamy buff, and ours was Colin Robinson for many years. He used to do an awful lot of research and often take many years to make a film, and he and his wife used to travel in their caravan far and wide just to get the shot. Now this is the Buxton line, and it has many curves and gradients in it, but I don't think it ever needed the specialist kind of locomotive featured in this next film.
100 years ago, on Tuesday the 17th of August 1909, a unique design of locomotive emerged from the Bear Peacock Works in Manchester. It was the brainchild of Herbert William Garrett and was designed to provide extra power on the lightly laid and often indifferent tracks of developing countries. The routes frequently abounded with sharp bends and reverse curves that were designed to ease the gradient. Garrett put an articulated power unit at each end of the boiler, and this enabled the weight of the water tank and the coal bunker to be concentrated over the driving wheels to maximise adhesion. As a result, the engines developed the power of two conventional locomotives. From its foundation by Charles Bayer and Richard Peacock in 1854, the company had built up a reputation for quality and for building engines for particular purposes. Their works were well laid out and expanded to cope with the growing order book. By the company's jubilee in 1904, the works covered an area of 12 acres, and nearly 4,500 engines of all types had been built, including many for export. The first engines to the Garrett design were made for the Tasmanian Government Railways to be used on the 2-foot gauge North East Dundas tramway. This ran from the mineral mines on Mount Reed and followed a tortuous route through rugged mountain passes, crossing numerous river valleys on timber trestle viaducts before reaching the mainline railhead at Zeehan, some 18 miles away. Incredibly, the first engine not only survives, but is in use on the Welsh Highland Railway in Snowdonia. To celebrate its centenary, the 100-year-old veteran was transported to a special exhibition at the Manchester Museum of Science and Industry. The museum is home to a 3-foot 6-gauge Garrett from South Africa, where some of the most powerful locomotives ever made by Bear Peacock were to be found. Built in 1930, this engine was used on the main routes from Natal until the lines were electrified. For the next 30 years, it found duties hauling heavy coal trains. In Britain, the first standard gauge Garrett engine for industrial use was built in 1924 for Vivian and Sons of Cardiff. In service, it hauled 30% more than 2 saddle tank engines of equivalent combined tractive effort. Many similar locomotives were built for private owners and for the nationalised railways. This one survived from the Baddesley Colliery in Staffordshire. Weighing over 60 tonnes, it was the largest locomotive built for industrial use in this country. It worked until the 1960s and is now the only surviving example of a standard gauge Garrett. The museum exhibition also included conventional engines built by Bear Peacock, and these were in steam, providing demonstrations of their original use on freight duties. In addition, over 130 models complemented the display and highlighted the range of Garrett locomotives built for use throughout the world. South Africa became home to many of the 1100 Garrett engines built by Bayer Peacock. They were used on the 3'6" gauge main lines and on the 2' gauge branch lines with their steep gradients and twisting curves. Four of the 2' gauge engines have been returned to this country for use on the newly reopened Welsh Highland Railway in Snowdonia. Two have already been refurbished and provide unusual motive power on this scenic line. The engines were part of the very last batch of Garretts to be built by Bayer Peacock before the company closed in 1966. Alongside the first one, built in 1909, they provide a fitting memorial to over 150 years of locomotive building in Manchester.
It's a serious business doing comedy, and it's even more serious doing slapstick. And when you're trying to do it with your two brothers, it's a right to do. This reservoir in the Goyt Valley provides drinking water for Stockport. It's great to have such a facility as the National Park so close by. But beware walking in parkland in town. Phil Guy was an early member of the club in the 70s and rejoined us a few years ago. He has great creativity and a sense of fun. Or is it?
This is Bramhall. The village sits just 5 miles away from Manchester's busy international airport. But my story takes place just a stone's throw away from the village at a place called Bramhall Hall. With 1,000 years of history, Bramhall Hall is one of Britain's finest black and white timber frame buildings. This is a Tudor house in the traditional local style. The hall and parkland are now owned by Stockport County Council after being left to them by the previous owner, Charles Neville, back in 1935. Although the hall attracts large numbers, it's the 70 acres of beautiful landscape parkland that most visitors come to see, featuring 2 lakes, woodland walks and gardens. The park is popular with children, dog walkers, bird watchers, or anyone wishing to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life. But I'm not here to tell you about the nice side of the park, but a much darker side. It's got ghosts. The most feared are the 3 skeletons of death. Anyone unfortunate to see this spectre will themselves be dead within 6 months. The second and less feared is that of the dancing skeleton. This is believed to be that of Henry VIII, who promised after his death to return and dance till the early hours. Two more recent ghosts have been seen. The first is a maid by the name of Fanny Arkwright, who met her end while cleaning this toilet when the lid fell on her head and broke her neck. Over the years, some visitors have had the pleasure of seeing Fanny on the first floor corridor. The last and most recent is that of Eric Fallsover, a local man and keen bird watcher. He drowned in this swamp while creeping up on a pair of tits nested in a nearby tree. But the story I'm about to tell you is far more terrifying than any ghost. The problem started back in 2011 when visitors complained about seeing strange creatures like giant snails, unusual beetles and poisonous frogs. It turned out that irresponsible pet owners were dumping these off at the park. As weeks went by, farmers started leaving their unwanted animals at the park. These range from chickens, a pig, then a goat, and one morning a bull arrived. And then, in early spring of 2012, things took on a darker side. It all started with a distraught dog owner who contacted the council to say his dog had gone missing in the park and was getting very concerned about its whereabouts. Some days later, the number had risen to over 5 dogs. The council had soon found the culprit responsible. Yes, some idiot had released this monster into the park, and it's believed there could be more than just the one. This park was now becoming no place to walk a dog. Some weeks later, things went from the sublime to the ridiculous when something arrived in the park that would change its future forever. And from that day on, the park was getting more and more out of control, and the council couldn't find any answers. And if things couldn't get any worse, a creature from hell that belonged more in the 12th century than the 21st arrived at the park. But enough was enough, and in August 2013 emergency meetings were held at Stockport Town Hall, and the decision was made to close the park for the first time in living memory. The gates were closed and the park no longer belonged to the people. The battle was won by the creatures, and there seemed to be no end in sight. With no bird song, just the roars and screams of unwelcome creatures, the park had become an eerie place. As the weeks went by, what seemed like an impossible task soon changed for the better. And by early autumn, the council were winning the battle. All the large reptiles had been captured and sent off to specialist parks around the world. But there was one creature nobody wanted, and that was the dragon. So the council had to deal with it in the most humane way possible. With the park now clear, birdsong arrived once again, as well as the ducks and geese. Even the squirrels came out of hiding. And with new laws passed making it illegal to dump any creatures in the park have now been put into place. And I'm afraid anyone breaking these laws will spend at least 3 months in the stocks, and that's without food and water. With the nightmare over and things getting back to normal, it was time to reopen the park and this happened on the 5th of November 2013, and it went with a bang. The following morning, visitors returned. Children played once more, and families took picnics. Young families fed the ducks and the geese. And dog walkers let their dogs run free once more. The park was now back in control with the council where it belonged. This beautiful place is not just my park, it's our park, and it belongs with the people, and long may it remain.
Imagine you could see over that hill behind me for 1100 miles, and there would be Helsinki in Finland. And Helsinki was the inspiration for one of our filmmakers, Don Groom, while on a cruise. Don was a cameraman with the BBC for many years, travelling far and wide, and he always said it was the best job in the world. And here, in a mix of photography and computer work, is a very powerful film. filming me now, Frank Parker, lives out in the heart of the national park in Great Longston, which is near here. Cycle clubs are allowed to organise road races along these country lanes, and this is the starting line of one of them you're going to see in the film next. Frank organises club members to film these races, and he strings them out all the way along the route. They are monsters of organisation, but Frank has a great care for detail and equally great graphic skills to help you follow the race.
After a break of almost 10 years, Sharrow, Worlow and Sheffrek cycle clubs are back in Derbyshire for the High Peak TLI Road Race. It's event organiser Peter Dungworth's job to prepare the course, which starts just outside Flag Village, then undulates gently downhill to Monash, before climbing smartly up to Red House and then turning back across the moor to where it began. This race takes place over 5 3/4 laps, that's 67k, and it's attracted over 50 riders who have already been sorted into 3 groups for the handicap start. First off are the long markers, and the names to look out for are Pete Riles, Phil Axe, Mick Rosen, John Hind, Neil Proctor, Peter Middleton and Ian Dutton. Looks all pretty leisurely so far, Peter.
Well, you see, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, this is 42 miles long. It's 2 hours worth of riding. This is going to be a very, very tough circuit. The riders, they've been warned, these are country roads. This is what racing in the High Peak is about. It's not about motorways, it's about country roads. The farmers are doing what farmers do. They're sort of baling hay at the moment, but the traffic is very small, really. Now flattens out and they'll start to change down a gear. And this is when the racing will really start here on the first lap. Because they're coming up to what is a 90-degree turn, so there'll be anchors on here. They'll go round here at no more than 5-10 miles an hour. This is a very slow corner. This will be the fastest descent on the course because you're out of flag, you're away from civilization, as it were. You've got empty roads. When the pressure's on, they'll be strung out in a long snake line.
Thanks, Peter, and we'll be back to hear about the rest of the course after the middle markers get started. And the names to look out for in this group are Mike Hutton, Andy Prince, Craig Breeze, Tom Sutton, James Hunt and Andy Ellis. By now the long markers are a third of the way round the loop, approaching Monash.
Now we'll have some marshals down here because the sharp left-hand turn onto Horse Lane. So this is the long climb. This will be, about 1.5 miles maybe. It's very narrow. It's not smooth, it's not billiard table top. It's soggy, you've really got to try hard coming up here. Going up Horse Lane, riders will attack. Individual riders will try and get off the front and they'll try and get a group of people working together. Average speed will be about 23 miles an hour throughout the whole circuit. Top speed 30, 35, 40s. The finish is about as far now as you can see that. There's a lay-by on your left.
And just before the long markers get to this spot for the very first time, the Scratch group are just about to set off. They're 11 minutes behind the leaders and 5 minutes behind the middle markers. From this group you'll need to keep a sharp eye out for Dan Story, Simon Keaton, James Thompson and Tim Rosen. So with half a lap or so to make up, this elite group was off to a pretty brisk start. And slowly but surely they closed the gap on leaders Peter Middleton and Ian Dutton, who led a breakaway on lap 2 but soon threw off their rivals, so that at the start of lap 4 it was just the pair of them who were way out front, 1.5 minutes ahead of the Group 1 pack. But they were only 4.5 minutes ahead of a chasing trio from the Scratch group, who were closing in at a rate of 2 minutes a lap. And here they are, cruising downhill to the Monash corner, where we can get a better view of Simon Keaton, James Thompson and Dan Story. A few minutes earlier, the leaders were powering up Horse Lane. This road's got the sort of gradient profile that sorts the men from the boys, and by the time they got to the summit, the chasing trio were another 10 seconds closer to the front. 12 minutes later, a third of the way round lap 5 and the start of the long descent into Monash. This pack of long and middle markers have lost 30 seconds on the leaders during the previous lap. They're now 2:10 behind Middleton and Dutton, and it looks like they're about to be caught by the chasing trio from the scratch group. This gap's only 25 seconds. So let's check those split times as the three contending groups go through Monash. The pack are now 2 minutes 19 behind the leaders, and the trio, who are temporarily a quartet as they pass a straggler, are only 2:40 off the lead. A mile further on, Middleton and Dutton are still neck and neck as they climb up to Red House. And by the way, the rider behind them isn't in the race, but these are. Keaton, Thompson and Story have just got to the front of the pack, and now the only thing between them and the leaders is 2 minutes 10 seconds, and there's just over 1 lap remaining. Hubbardale Crossroads, 1k past the finish line, and with the scratch trio setting the pace, the pack are now only 1:28 behind the leaders. Middleton and Dutton looking in complete control of the race as they pass the S-bend for the last time. But now, with Dan Story fronting the attack, the lead has dropped to under a minute. Dykehead Farm is on the long downhill stretch to Monash, where the descent averages 1 in 50. And in the 2.4k since the S-bend, Story has closed the gap to 18 seconds, and the pack are still with him. The Monash turn, and there's still clear air between the leaders and the chasers, but Story's dropped back into the pack since we saw him last. Well, this view from the end of Horse Lane shows just how close the leading groups are. Dutton's pulling away from Middleton, and with 1.5k to go, Story's in third place at the head of the pack, but he's now breaking away. Just look at that pedal power. Thompson's in fourth place. Less than 1k to go, and Dutton's still out on his own. Now our camera's got stuck, but Story's caught up with Middleton, and the pack are 50 metres or so behind. Now approaching the line, Ian Dutton, yes, he's done the necessary. But second and third are still in dispute, and Dan Story steals second place by a length from Pete Middleton. Craig Breeze is storming in fourth place. And Andy Prince made fifth, just a length ahead of Mike Hutton. So a splendid return to the high peak for road race cycling, and especially for the winner Ian Dutton, and of course the handicappers who provided such a nail-biting finish. As for the camera crew, well, they said that after 2 hours of filming in the summer sunshine, they were starting to flag. And when they got there, they were looking forward to a real high peak, high tea.
Val Ellis has been one of the mainstays of our club in recent years. Val used to be president and chairman of the IAC. She organised an amazing evening in our club one night where 3 groups had to make 3 separate films, each given 45 minutes to do it. It was surprising, everybody was very enthusiastic, there was green screen, full props, the lot. You're going to see 2 of the results now. One was set in a pub, not this one, and the other in a wartime mess tent.
Hello, Don. Good to see you.
Hello,
I
Ken.
hear you're getting married.
Yep.
Is it anybody I know?
No,
Oh, this woman, is she good looking?
not particularly.
Maybe she's a good cook, is she?
No, she don't cook too well.
I know. She's got loads of money, yes?
She ain't got two halfpennies to rub together.
Tell me, is she good in bed?
I haven't the faintest idea.
So, why on earth are you marrying her then?
'Cause she can still drive.
Private, I've finished with this.
Sir?
Now bring me my semolina.
I cannot do that, sir.
I won't say this again. Bring me my semolina.
I cannot, sir.
Lieutenant,
Captain?
place this man on a charge for insubordination.
Yes, sir.
And while you're there, bring me my semolina.
I'm sorry, sir. I cannot do that.
What? Why not?
Because, sir, it states quite clearly in King's regulations, one must never help another soldier to desert.
Well, in that case, I'll just have a latte.
This is our club, Cheadle and Gatley, in their break. No fancy coffees or milky puddings. And we'll be back in part 2.